Hi everyone, it's Maddie Brady. We're here to get real about mental health. Stay tuned for some great conversations with some very special guests. Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Real show. We are here with Grant, who works for the Phoenix organization.
I do.
And he's here to tell us a little bit about his story and also the amazing things that the Phoenix does.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me, Maddie.
Of course.
My name is Grant Wheeler. I'm the volunteer manager for a nonprofit called the Phoenix. I'm the volunteer manager for the New York chapter. And we're a sober active community that builds fitness, community, wellness, creative activities that are free to anybody with 48 hours of sobriety. Mm-hmm. We're founded in Denver in 2006. Served over 300,000 people since then nationwide. We're still kind of babies in New York. We're a couple years old. But yeah, I mean, that's how we connected.
Yeah.
Through the Phoenix.
You said 300,000 people?
300,000 people
Wow.
plus since 2006. The goal is 1 million.
That's amazing.
Working towards this 1 million strong campaign nationally.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's funny because it's like, you know, one sober walk, one rock climbing group, one CrossFit class, one trip to a treatment center at a time.
Yeah.
So it's amazing what collectively, I mean, we're not a super big organization. It's like 100 I don't know exactly, 130 employees nationally, but we're in 42 states. And we're doing the thing. It's been this extraordinary opportunity. I started with the Phoenix as a volunteer in February of 2022. Or maybe January or February of 2022. And I started because I had a past career. I worked in bars and restaurants. I was a owner, operator, partner of a small hospitality firm based here in New York City in Lower Manhattan with properties in the West Village and the East Village and the pandemic started and was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I got a break. And I started running a lot, and I started, I was pretty privileged, to be able to take some time. I started running a lot, really dove back into recovery stuff. And it was amazing. But at some point my wife was like, it's amazing that you're going running every day and you're hitting all these meetings and making all these friends, but at some point you're gonna have to stop asking me what I want for dinner every day at 4 p.m. and have something else going on in your life.
Yeah.
And she found the Phoenix on Volunteer Match, and it's funny because I'd been sort of talking about. I quit my past career working in bars and restaurants, and was basically, every opportunity in the world would come across, and I'd be like, I want to do this, I want to do that. I was going to open a farm-to-table kosher grocery store in the Bronx. I was going to go get my sustainability MBA from Bard. These were things I was exploring. And then one day it sort of came to me that what do I love to do? Mm-hmm. And I love to train, and I love to stay sober. And I was like, wait, is there some way these things can come together? And then Rachel sent me this listing for the Phoenix, and at first I was kind of pissed off. I was like, these people stole my idea that I haven't told anybody.
I have felt like that many a times.
I was like, these people stole my brilliant idea that nobody else knows about.
Yeah.
Because I don't tell anybody about it. But then
and it has been around for 10 years.
Yeah, it's been around for 10. These people have been on this way before me, and somehow they're doing me a disservice. But that quickly turned around, and then I started volunteering. I started a couch to 5K program in Prospect Park, which was super fun. And then the CrossFit gym that I was working at the time at the front desk, I went from running this hospitality business to my dream job then became like mopping floors and checking people in at a CrossFit gym. Mm-hmm. It was like this act of, it was this act of humility and getting small and reimagining what it's like to be a worker among workers, which is something that's often said in the 12-step fellowship that I'm a part of. But another component was this CrossFit gym is called CrossFit South Brooklyn. It's on DeGraw Street in Gowanus in Brooklyn. Had always kind of been like this cultural community beacon, this place where it's not without its problems, just like anywhere else. But the owner there, David Osario, just like really, really, really cares about people and quality of programming and community and connection and giving back and taking chances and finding ways to do it while having an extremely, especially for the CrossFit space, like an extremely, financially viable and stable business. So when I was like, I'm leaving my career, what do I want to do next? And I was like, no matter what I want to do it the way that David does it. So I started working there at the front desk, and then, and then I got connected with the Phoenix. Then there was the opportunity I got my level 1 CrossFit level 1 certification. I now coach there, but I had this opportunity to bring a Phoenix class there. And that was this sort of like amazing fusion and connection of things lining up, kind of emerging seemingly out of nowhere,
That's amazing. And I know for me, at least, how I discovered the Phoenix was at the walk, and I love all different types of activities. So I think it's so cool that you guys do rock climbing and CrossFit. And I've never done CrossFit. I was telling you before, like, I've rode, I've swam, biked, ran, never done CrossFit. So that's something I have to try. But you guys do so many different neat events, which is really, really cool, especially in sobriety, because sometimes it feels like certain sub communities that do like outdoor activities or something else have a heavy drinking culture, or are the types of people that like to go get the IPAs and
that's definitely that's definitely a thing. I mean, it's interesting that when I first got sober for the first time, which is essentially when I stopped using hard drugs, I had some relapses from then moving on, but kind of the first thing I did, I got sober in the 12 steps here in New York, and rapidly, like almost immediately, joined a CrossFit gym. I can't remember why, but it very much, like, physical activity and movement, and especially in community, became such a huge part of my recovery really, really early on. And what's interesting is the Phoenix is sort of it's this gap that bridges that personal intention with that practice. So I remember when I spoke to my sponsor, he would talk to me about my step work, and I would tell him about my step work and what I'm doing, and immediately, like, conversationally flow in how well my training is going. And he would sort of be like, it's cute that you like CrossFit, but these things, he wouldn't understand the relevance. And at the same time, at the gym, I would, like, see somebody having a beer or something like that, and it didn't trigger me. But at the same time, I was like, I was like, in my brain, I assumed, the haze of early sobriety, but in my brain, I was like, these things are so connected. Yeah. Because that level of self-care, dedication, commitment, showing up for myself, was something that I really hadn't experienced before. So there was this immediate cognitive bonding between fitness and community and recovery. So the Phoenix is kind of this incredible thing where a Phoenix event, I went rock climbing yesterday. It's not a recovery meeting, but everyone shows up and gets to know one another. And there's this common bond of people who are all either in recovery, sober curious, somebody who has 48 hours of sobriety, who's a advocate or a friend or something. And there's just this initial intentionality that allows people to identify in their recovery while doing these communal, physically engaging, mentally engaging activities. And for me, it's almost it's what goes unsaid that is what makes it so powerful. Yeah. Just being like, there's this, people from different socioeconomic, racial gender backgrounds all coming together and sort of rapidly through like an icebreaker question and some community standards that we list at the beginning of our event, which allow us to really define and build boundaries and build intentionality about the work that we do. It allows these people to come together and support one another and really grow. And for me, what's been most amazing about the Phoenix is just this capacity to just live in perpetual identification as a person in recovery, which I'm sure is not all that different than what you're doing with the podcast. Not to make assumptions, but
yeah, no, I mean, it definitely helps me, and it's helped me build a community. I came here knowing nobody in recovery. I barely knew anybody, period, let alone in recovery. And it has connected me to so many different amazing people. What I love about the Phoenix events and the idea of that is that there's so many different types of people in recovery and who deal with recovery differently. And I love to know different people and different walks of life and how they're doing recovery. But it's really like-minded people, I feel like, that are in recovery that really cope and engage in athletic activities. And I love to be around those types of people because that's what really helps me. Like, running's a huge part of my recovery and working out. And I quite honestly feel like I couldn't have done it if I didn't have athletic outlets as well. So I think it's amazing to meet other people that not only are they sober, but they also love to work out and be in community events and talk to other people. And I feel like sometimes even with running, it's I like to run by myself a lot, so it's great to do events and you feel a little bit like you're on a team again. Like, I grew up doing cross country, swimming, track, all different types of teams, and it feels like you're on a team. Or I've been part of athletic organizations that were actually very centered around drinking, so then to be part of one that is centered around sobriety is incredible.
Yeah, I think that's so well put. It's there is this, I guess, team component, which is interesting. I have such I don't know. I should probably write them out. I have like traumatic associations with team sports. As a young person, I was a hockey player. And, was in high school and played some like junior stuff and was just always like incredibly insecure. And I think a lot of that was because the pain that I was feeling, whether before I started using or after I started using, sort of two different kinds of psychological pain. I didn't have the opportunity to sort of be upfront with that. I grew up in Connecticut in the 2000s and the peak of the opioid epidemic, but still super sort of like alpha culture. But in Connecticut, there's maybe this, I'm sure there's in a lot of places, but just in affluent suburban places, there's an alphaness that involves sort of showing no weakness across all bounds and spaces, whether it's your athletics or your academics or cultural stuff. And I'd always felt pretty weak. Since I was a kid, I struggled with depression and anxiety. And what's interesting is in my story with substance use, drugs and alcohol really worked until they didn't, which is something that is said quite often. But drugs saved my life, I think, before they really took it away. Like, I was incredibly depressed, isolated a ton, was probably on a path towards self-harm. And yeah, I just remember being able to be among and have important developmental experiences and form friendships and show up at things and experience things because of drugs and alcohol. They allowed me to participate. And basically the amount of things, my addiction grew on this scale where, at first it was like drugs and alcohol allowed me to participate socially or, early on in romantic situations. And then, fast forward the tape, 10 years later, in order for me to, show up to work or show up at my mother's house or answer the phone or, show up for a family member or what have you, that began to, require me to be intoxicated. So it's, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, it's, I don't know. We started with the team dynamic thing, and it's just funny that you said that. And now I think part of what I love so much about the Phoenix and part of what I love so much about recovery and my recovering out loud is that it self-defines this sort of, community space, this team space.
Yeah.
And this ability to, especially through my work, show up and have something to offer and be of service. So the Phoenix, we build fitness events that are in the public. We partner with other organizations on fitness events. For example, yesterday we partnered with this great group called Motive Outdoors, where we ran to Rockaway Beach from Nolita. And then afterwards we had a little beach day. After that we went rock climbing at the Cliffs Gowanus. And then after that we had a movie night also at the Cliffs, which is a climbing gym in Gowanus. We do stuff like that, but then also we partner with treatment organizations. I go into treatment centers with volunteers. We take them through all sorts of different programming. A lot of the programming we're building now, and a lot of the programming that I'm taking into treatment centers is stuff that isn't explicitly like physical exercise. For example, this past Tuesday, I went into a treatment center in Crown Heights, and I brought this extraordinarily talented improv teacher with me. And we did improv with a bunch of people who'd been in treatment not very long and a bunch of their clinicians. And it functions as this team building exercise, this embodiment exercise. And it's extraordinary to sort of match that level of embodied creativity with really early willingness and recovery. And like this strong willingness to change. And just to see people come alive and express themselves in the most magical ways. It was like so incredibly moving. But yeah, and it's extraordinary to feel in community with those people. I'm going into a treatment center with people who have such different circumstances than I do, that look older, that look different than I do, that are in a lot of cases much older than I am. And immediately through this amazing thing that is recovery, I form relationships and I feel like among.
Do you feel like it helps your own recovery, being able to give back and help other people?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Phoenix is an extraordinary gift, the work that I do to my recovery. I think if there's one sort of, so yes, like strong yes, but a small but. And that small but is that I spend so much time in identification and so much time being of service, and I certainly am a believer that service keeps me sober. But sometimes I can sort of let my personal tank, drain out. And, get work burnout is something you could potentially call it, but then there can also be this like, I can push away and sort of disassociate and start to isolate separate from my work, which is a tough thing to balance. I think it's a tough thing that a lot of people who work either in the treatment industry or in the mental health industry struggle with.
Yeah, definitely.
I do have things in my life. I go to therapy. I love my therapist. It's like my favorite time of every week.
That's great.
Yeah, I love the whole process. I go to therapy in person too, which is amazing. It takes way more time. But I love the process of putting my shoes on and being like, where am I going? I'm going to therapy.
Yeah.
Getting on the subway and being like, I'm going to go to therapy. So let's try to only engage in like positive habits on the subway. Like, let's not respond to emails the whole time. Let's try to breathe a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I definitely don't go to as many meetings as I should anymore for my 12-step fellowship. Part of that has to do with the fact that I don't feel the need to find that identification as much. I remember prior to doing this work and getting more involved in communities of recovery that I would walk into a 12-step meeting and sort of have like this whiplash, being like, oh my God, like I'm a sober person. I'm one of these people. Because like all day I'd been sort of operating at a different frequency, being out in the world. And then all of a sudden that'll be an intense grounding experience. And I think now I spend a lot of time in that grounding experience.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think my biggest struggle in this work is, just keeping my cup as full as I can.
Mm-hmm. How does it make you feel when you do go through hard times in recovery and you are going out there and helping so many people? And sometimes, at least for me, my experience, when I feel like I'm going through a hard time or maybe not making the best decision for my mental health or something like that, I feel loaded guilt, because it's like I'm supposed to be this person all about mental health and doing recovery, and then realizing I'm a human being too, and you can still struggle in recovery. So what is that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's this movie called Get Him to the Greek. Have you ever seen it?
No.
It's the Judd Apatow movie, and there's this line in there where it stars Russell Brand, and his girlfriend says you can turn anything into heroin. I think he's doing yoga at the time, but it's like you can turn anything into heroin, and I can definitely turn like work and helping people into that. I was a heroin addict. So yeah, there's definitely this thing where like this sort of being of service can become toxic. But as far as having hard times in sobriety goes, I've recently sort of had this revelation after, gosh, how old am I? I'm 38 years old. So after, 33 years of being a depressive and an anxious person, that I think that for me, depression is this growth state where part of me is growing and part of me wants new things and part of me has a new desire or a new interest or a new way to live. And then this larger part of me that is so terrified of change and is so terrified of growth wants to stay exactly where it is. And I think that for me, depression is that me being pulled in sort of two different directions.
Yes.
And while it's hard for me to be grateful for that feeling and that desire to isolate and disassociate and that pain, it is really easy for me to find gratitude for growth, for opportunity, for hope, and also just for newness, right? Life is long, and I can recognize that part of me that doesn't want to grow, which is like a child part of me, right, who wants to stay either in the womb or stay comfortable in some way or stay satiated. That there's if that part had its way all the time, that I wouldn't be sitting on this couch, and then I wouldn't be working with a Phoenix, and I wouldn't be in a 13-year relationship and an 8-year marriage that survived my addiction, and continues to survive my addiction. I'm still an addict from sort of how I think about it. So yeah, it's tough though. You really gotta I'm definitely the kind of person that can show up for life unprepared. I have a meditation practice. I do therapy. I connect with other people in recovery. But when my depression hits or my anxiety hits, I can definitely feel like I'm like on a camping trip and didn't bring a tent. Or there's not enough food or something. I can feel really like, whoops. And I start sort of scratching and clawing for ways to either find my way out or the most comfortable way to sink into it also, which definitely isn't healthy, but But yeah, so it's interesting though. I mean, right before working for the Phoenix, I got back into recovery. And when I left my career, there was this moment of bliss. I went on some trips. I went climbing with my brother in Moab for a while, which was amazing. Really dove into a bunch of stuff. But then I started having these, like every night before I went to bed, in my brain, it would just run through all of the terrible things I'd ever done. I had this like intense anxiety, depressive, like myself attacking myself moment. And that's what brought me to my new therapist that I've been seeing now for over 3 years. And who's extraordinary. But, yeah, I forget where I was going with that, but it's where I was going, it's just quite a dark point where I was going. It's maybe why I ran away from it, is that I definitely don't fear picking up, which is terrifying, because oblivion and disconnection looks like something a lot different when I no longer fear picking up, right?
Yeah.
Like the options get limited. They get more and more limited as to like how can I maximally act out and cause problems in my life. So that's an interesting thing that comes, I think.
Yeah.
With some time is that yeah, like I'm not gonna start drinking. I don't think. I'm not gonna start using drugs again. But like what is like the solution to numbing out then? And that sort of thought and that thought process can be like pretty morbid. So yeah, it's important for me to, not only one, like use the tools that I have, but then two, like perpetually explore new tools.
Yeah. I think the way you explained depression and all of that is extremely beautiful in the sense that sometimes you need, I heard actually Jim Carrey say this, depression is reminding you that your body needs deep rest. Yeah. And for myself, I do feel I can completely relate to when your mind is pulling you one way, but you're trying to stay somewhere else and you're torn in between. And sometimes it's really hard to let go of things. And that's something I struggle with for sure. So to let go of things, including sometimes your identity, and go in a completely different direction. Yeah. Sometimes you get that imposter syndrome where it's like, is this even me? And just still trying to hold on to, well, I want to go in this way, but I also want to hold on to A, B, and C from my old ways. But you can't keep going into the direction that you're supposed to be going and still hold on to that. You have to let go of it. And that's something that I definitely struggle with. So I think that's a good reminder to remember. Sometimes it's your body telling you that something is no longer serving you.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting too. And I've like fought hard for those things to keep serving me. Like there was a time in my life, especially when I was working a lot in hospitality, where I'd like wake up at like 8 a.m. and be like, I know I'm going to have a long night tonight. I know I'm going to be super busy. I know I'm going to be exhausted. I'm going to like strap on some like comfort and relaxation by watching like 4 hours of television. And that doesn't work for me anymore. And I've tried really hard at certain points to like make that work again as this ability to sort of disconnect and relax. And the older I get, the more, I mean, I'm not particularly old, but the older I get, I've realized that relaxation really needs to be this active process, which comes kind of with a two-edged sword, because like I'm so prone to activity, right, with like running and working out, that I'm like, what's going to be relaxing? I've recently gotten into like sound bath meditations, which I found this amazing sort of cheat code for having a really strong meditation practice. I've done about 4 of those in the last month. Who knows if it's like, novel or whatever. There's always that fear, right? As for me, as an addict, being like, heroin worked so well, and then it stopped working, and I like get really excited about new things like sound
Yeah.
bath meditation. Then I'm always like, when is this going to stop working? Just like everything else.
Yeah.
But that's also such a blessing that we get to have so many experiences. And it's interesting you talked about, you're a runner and I'm a runner, and I also, coach CrossFit and do all this stuff and climb. And there's also this thing called injury too, which like, it's interesting when the things you use to care for the things I use to care for myself, I'm like, I know this thing still works, but I can't do it. And then I'm put in this place where it's like, what is the other solution? Where else do I go?
Yeah.
From
I know
here?
whenever I'm injured, that's when I can really spiral in my head.
Yeah.
When I have an injury or when I'm sick. And I think for me, I have to detach myself from the ego and thinking like in that victim mentality, why am I sick? Why am I injured?
Yeah.
And thinking, okay, maybe I needed this rest for a reason. Maybe I need it to find something else right now and then go back to it stronger. And just always trying to look at everything as maybe this is for a reason, or else you can get caught up in that victim mentality. Like, why am I injured right now? Or sometimes I'll beat myself up. Like, why'd I go on that run if I didn't do this? And like, releasing control and realizing that it was inevitable and there's nothing I necessarily did as to why. Like I'm always trying to find the reason for something, like a math equation. So I'm injured because I must have done this, or I'm sick because I did this. And it's like sometimes life just happens to you and you have to accept that and be able to grow from it.
I really struggle with the everything happens for a reason thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I kind of don't, because I there's this part of me that thinks everything happens for a reason, and that reason is me.
Yeah.
Which is also not great, right? Like I don't really like watch or read the news, because the second I start reading the news, I'm like, I can't believe that I did all this terrible stuff. Do you know what I mean? They're like talking about orangutan extinction, and I'm like, I really should have showed up for those orangutans.
Yeah.
Like,
I should have not
at
used
some
the
point in the last
straws.
couple of, or just like, why didn't you do something about that?
Yeah.
Or like the debt the debt ceiling stuff. I was like, this is, I like open it and start reading it, and I'm like, this is entirely my fault.
Yeah. Like, why
This is
didn't
how
I
I
start
go
planning when I was
emotionally.
12?
Yeah, exactly. Or like, why have I not been more, I don't know, politically active? Or how did I let all these people get into power that I disagree with? So yeah, the everything happens for a reason thing is challenging, but I do like the saying, it always it's always, I can't even remember how it goes right now, but sentiment is, it's like always good in the end. And if it's not good, it's not the end.
Yeah.
So that's kind of similar.
Yeah.
Being like this will work its way out. But everything happens for a reason. That level of surrender, or handing something over to something sort of forces more omnipotent than me, is challenging.
Yeah.
I don't have a hard time with surrender. I don't have a hard time with, stuff that comes in the 12 steps, whether it's prayer, meditation, or having a relationship with a higher power. But that understanding of causality is tough, because I'm always blaming myself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. Sometimes you have to just let it go and try to grow from the situation. There was someone else I love that I listened to in early sobriety. It was like a Navy SEAL, and he was talking about the concept of, if something bad happens to you, good. You're break your leg, good.
Yeah.
You're going through a divorce, good. Whatever is happening to you, even though it might be the worst time of your entire life, just think of it good, because now I get to grow from it.
Yeah.
And
I definitely do that.
Yeah.
I definitely do that. I'm also like, I troll people, with like people say something to me, not like a huge crisis, but people come to me in confidence, and, sometimes the first thing I'll say is like, that sounds like a really great opportunity to practice patience and acceptance.
yeah. Yeah.
And I try to do that as well. Serenity, prayer my way through stuff. But yeah, that idea that it happens for a reason is hard. It's really, really hard for me.
It's very hard to grasp.
Yeah, it's very hard to grasp.
But with running, so you got into running a little bit later.
I got into running really
recovery.
late. Yeah. I ran a little bit in high school. Some friends of mine started a rugby club at our boarding school, which was the first time I think I had like actively run in my life, having been a hockey player. And I was a goaltender in hockey, and I was kind of not a very good athlete outside of this one sort of sports specific thing. I was not the person who would ever be like the captain of the lacrosse team, the captain of the basketball team, and this, but I was like a good hockey player. I think it's partially because hockey, and in my family, you just start so incredibly young that your proficiency of skating and seeing the game is something that can sort of become endemic to my psyche, right? But yeah, I ran a little bit in high school and was like okay at it. Then had a long time just in super active addiction. And then I found CrossFit when I first got sober, and was always kind of good at running within that context. Like, it's one of the things we do in CrossFit. And then the pandemic happened, and was just like, I have so much free time. And I was, me being me, was like, I'm going to train for a 50K, which is like a 31-mile race.
Wow.
Never having run before. Started training.
That's extreme.
Started training. Had like, it was like a 20-week training schedule. About 8 weeks in, I'm injured. Which was, again, such a blessing, right? Because I got to teach myself how to run. YouTube is very double-edged sword. But there is the opportunity to be like, why does this hurt? Let me try all of these different things, especially when you're not working and it's in the middle of a pandemic and you have nothing else to do. I got to really sort of fix and correct running form stuff and build like a toolkit for how to stay healthy while running. But yeah, I started running like April of 2020, really, pretty seriously. And I've recently sort of took the first semi-extended break where I was running less than like 20 miles a week for a couple months. But yeah, running has been, it's interesting. I was reading something. So on Memorial Day, there's this CrossFit workout called Murph that everyone does. It's a mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 air squats, and a mile run. And Mark Zuckerberg did it, the CEO of Facebook. For those of you who don't know who Mark Zuckerberg is, he CEO and founder of Facebook. And he got like an incredible time. And he was, in the article, was sort of talking about his fitness journey, which is that he used to run every morning, and then he realized that didn't create enough space for him to disconnect from his work. So he started doing things like CrossFit and jiu-jitsu and all of these other things. He stopped running. And it's interesting that running and then like CrossFit and climbing, they're like, I think of them sometimes collectively, but it's really sort of like the alpha and omega of my fitness reality. Running is this time for like incredible introspection and examination and sort of this more Western form of meditation, this sort of like call and response, listening, engagement. And then stuff like CrossFit and climbing is this much more like follow the breath, step outside, sort of like Eastern concept, this sort of like body scanning engagement concept of exercise as meditation.
Yeah.
So that article, it's interesting. It's like obviously this like clickbait piece about Mark Zuckerberg, but it caused me to think about like running is taking time for myself, but in this time where I can really sort of confront my demons, whether they're internal or external or work related or recovery related or family related. And because I'm constantly choosing to take one more step, and I'm constantly choosing to stay in this activity and sort of push through them, everything can start to feel, one, I can start to have creative ideas about solutions, right? Which may or may not manifest. But also what it does is it lets me like engage with these things consistently and like repetitively, to the fact that like this problem that feels so huge can start to feel a lot smaller. And that's kind of, I think, the amazing thing for me when it comes to my recovery and running. And the other thing is obviously like the community.
Yeah.
we go to the release run on Monday night, which is amazing. I'm so excited for Maddie's. You're running the marathon with us with the Phoenix. It's our first year having New York City marathon bibs, which is such a fun process. We have such a fun group. Meg is running it too with the Phoenix. So there's these recovery gaps, and then there's this opportunity also that I no longer have in my life to connect with people that aren't in recovery through running. Like the run I went to yesterday at the beach, people were having beers afterwards. We had a Phoenix contingent, which we had like our own table and people weren't drinking, but it's kind of great to get to intermingle in this like semi-safe space. And that's something that I want to do with the Phoenix more, is a lot of running and a lot of endurance sports has a big drinking component. And to create more sober space in that and more sober awareness, and also create more opportunities for people that might be in the drinking scene there to like imagine a different way to live. Like absolutely no pressure. I don't have a problem with drugs and alcohol, except for the fact that like I personally have a huge problem with drugs and alcohol. So it's just running is this amazing part of my recovery and of my life. And just signed up for a race this morning, this really, really steep trail race at Windham Mountain in Vermont in July. And then I'm running the Chicago Marathon in October.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then I might be running New York with y'all, not officially for the Phoenix team, but if I can get enough of the details like put aside, like, where we're all going to have dinner afterwards or like where our shakeout happens. If I have time, I'd love to run as well. New York's extraordinary. I ran it last year for the first time, and the energy is just like so magical. Yeah. I'm really excited. It's also a really strange race too, because like you wake up at like 3:00 in the morning and don't start running till like 9.
Oh gosh.
So there's like all these logistics, but you're doing them with all of these other people, and like everyone's so excited. Yeah. And then there's this sort of like lull where you're like, oh crap, I have to run. And then they're like to your corral, and then you get to the corral and the energy's crazy.
You're just freaking out. Yeah, I can picture it. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's neat, and all the different neighborhoods and stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, I'm really, really excited because
right here is like the craziest.
Really?
Well, not right here, like 10 blocks north, right?
Okay.
So you come off the Queensboro Bridge. It's not actually, I'd say the noisiest, most intense part of the marathon is like Lafayette Street through Brooklyn in Fort Greene, which we were just talking about because you're looking to move to Brooklyn. We'd love to have you. But yeah, the Queensboro Bridge, there's no spectators on the Queensboro Bridge.
Yeah.
So you run over the bridge. I ran it across it on the lower level. It's like kind of dark. It's silent. You just hear like footsteps and people, like it's basically half marathon in. People are having a really hard time. It's really steep. And then you come down the bridge and you drop right onto First Avenue at 59th Street. And all of a sudden it's like this, yin and yang of like so much intensity so much quiet on the bridge to then so much intensity of the screaming crowd. So yeah, it's pretty neat.
No, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And I know running for me, I'm so excited to be able to do it with you guys, not only to be able to run it because I always have wanted to, but to be able to run it with other sober people. But I know running for me has really, I think every lesson you learn from running, you can then go apply to real life. Like I even feel like that is a way for me, at least, to build confidence and being able to do things. Because I know when I start a run and I'm thinking in my head, okay, I'm going to go run 13.1 miles right now, no matter how I feel, I'm going to finish that run. And I think for me that confidence is continuously keeping promises to yourself. And when I start to run, I'm keeping that promise. And that's how you build confidence. So now I think, oh, like I just signed up for a half Ironman, and I'm like, well, I said I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And
you did? You just signed up for a half Ironman?
I signed up a couple weeks ago.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, one of my colleagues is doing it. And
me and a Phoenix member are going open water swimming tomorrow in Coney Island, but we should go sometime.
Yeah, I would love to, because now it's like, I'm doing that. There's not another option. And I think that's something that I really take away from running. And then definitely the introspective work I do while running and reflecting and all of that. And then I've tried jujitsu as well, and I loved it. And it was pre-pandemic. So that's something I want to get back into here, because I feel like I need that side as well. Like I like both.
Yeah, it's so nice there's something about the intense disconnection of something like jiu-jitsu or CrossFit or Muay Thai. I went to a Muay Thai class, which is like Muay Thai and jiu-jitsu, obviously both combat sports. But my experience with Muay Thai is you set up all these combos and you're always holding the bag for the other person. And like holding the bag is hard.
Yeah.
Too. So it's like kind of like this interval thing where like you're not resting when you're not working. You're still working. And if you do it wrong, there's consequences. Like if you don't put the bag in the right spot for the combination, somebody's gonna like kick you in the ribs.
Oh God.
You know?
That's a good way to learn.
So there's this like intense intellectual, it's so psychological.
Yeah.
Where you can't really let anything else in. You're so embodied and so dialed and so focused that everything else fades away.
Yeah, that's what I like. Like running, it's like I'm thinking about everything else but running, and then jujitsu, I'm thinking about only jujitsu. So it's neat
except
to
on the
have
track
both
when
of
I do
them.
speed workouts. I think I'm only thinking about
Yeah.
stuff.
When I'm doing something extremely painful, like really pushing myself, then I'm only thinking about running. But if I'm on like a nice leisurely run, then I'm thinking about other things.
I ran a 5K with the Phoenix. We helped organize this 5K in Ludlow, Vermont a couple weeks ago for the Divided Sky Foundation, which is Trey Anastasio, the lead singer of the band Fish, is in recovery and is opening a recovery center. And we led the warm up and like facilitated a bunch of stuff and donated and we were involved there. And it's so funny. Like 2 minutes into that 5K, all I could think about for the next 19 minutes of that 5K was quitting that 5K.
Yeah.
Which
I've
was
been there.
which was so advanced from a discomfort level.
Yeah.
I was just like, or maybe the next 16 minutes, the last 2 minutes, I was like, it's right there.
Yeah.
You can do it. You can see it. But
you didn't quit.
I didn't quit. No, I finished.
That's the good part.
Yeah, and I beat all the people. It was a fun run, but the people towards the front of the pack were kind of racing a little bit, and I beat everybody that I think I physically was capable of beating that day. So
there you go. So no matter what, and that's what's amazing about running, it's like on your best day and your worst day, feeling your best, feeling your worst, you still just got to do it.
You still just got to show up. Yeah.
I also wanted to touch on, I think it's really unique. So you mentioned your wife has been with you since you have not been sober. Like when you met your wife, you were not sober. I would love to know what that journey has been like.
My wife and I met, I don't know how else to tell this story, so I'll tell it. My wife and I met I lived in the Lower East Side on Broome between Orchard and Ludlow, and there's this amazing vegan, gluten-free bakery there that used to be called Baby Cakes, but because of a trademark thing is now called Aaron McKenna's Bakery. My wife's twin sister worked at that bakery. I was broke. I was like working in retail, but pretty unstable, post-financial crisis. Was exploring sobriety. Like the first time I quit using drugs was like just around that time. The way I quit that time was I went to the Met every morning before work. I like didn't do AA or anything like that. I just every day would get up and ride my bike to the Metropolitan Museum and spend like the 3 hours before work there. And I built this routine doing that. And then I got a job working in a bar. And at the same time sort of met my wife. And I don't know. We were just like a couple of young kids, and Rachel's not sober. She's definitely not one of us. Like when we were in our 20s, she did a lot of what people do in their 20s, but now Rachel will have, a couple drinks a month, maybe at most. But yeah, I mean, I worked in hospitality, worked in bars and restaurants. So like when we were partying, it was fun. And then I would take these times away and I would step away and try to like clean up my act and fail. But the last time, I mean, the first time I got sober, the first time I went to AA, the first time I really, really tried, and I relapsed a few times, but eventually got like 6 months. Was entirely for her.
Mm-hmm.
Right? She was like, I'm going to leave. And I couldn't imagine that. We had a dog. We were super, she was everything to me. And I was like, I got to do something. I got to try to figure this out. And what's amazing is that through the 12 steps or whatever, if you do what people say to do, which is get a sponsor, go to 90 meetings in 90 days, do all the stuff, get a service commitment, get a home group, all these things that people recommend in the 12 steps, is that even though like the world is still out there again, one, for me, it ruined my using.
Mm-hmm.
Like immediately already there it became this like, even though I relapsed again, there was all this like mountain of pain and shame around relapsing, which I'd never had before.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is that I really just learned that like there's a way to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if there's one way, there's probably many ways. Right? But at least there was a place that I knew I could go and get help and learn to care for myself again.
Yeah.
And then a year or so later, I got back into the program because a friend of mine had decided to get in there, and I was like, oh, I'll go with you. And then really started to establish some sobriety. And kind of at that same time, my life kind of took off. Like I got like a ton of, as they say in the rooms, like cash and prizes. And I built this career and had everything I could ever want, had more money than I could need, and Rachel was still around. And then I started to drift away, and I started like smoking weed, and I was a beverage director, and sometimes I'd like taste more cocktails than I should. I didn't get drunk in a long time. I didn't like pick up hard drugs again, but I lived separate from recovery. And then like just before and just around the pandemic, I lived that way in this sort of like dry, uncared for space, definitely in this sort of like workaholism, like not this great headspace for a while. The first step back towards self-care was me joining a gym. Mm-hmm. It was kind of like the seed that planted that I wanted to leave this career. Mm-hmm. I would go to the CrossFit gym at like noon and stay till like 4:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah. And
my business partners would be like, where are you? They wouldn't really be like, where are you? But like people would be like, what are you doing? Or like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. I still did my job, but there was this like resistance to going to work because I'd found this thing that I actually wanted to do. And I'd never experienced that before. And then just before the pandemic, I started to get back involved with this sort of stuff. And then like the last alcohol I ever tasted was during a fundraiser for employees of our company via like on Instagram Live or something, where I was like making Negronis for people and like tasted stuff. And that was the last time that I ever tasted anything. But yeah, it's funny. You first asked me about my relationship. What's it like? Maybe I'm being sort of avoidant of talking about my relationship. But yeah, I mean, Rachel and I met when we were kids. It was before the apps. Never really been on a dating app outside of like Rachel and I experimenting to be like, what's it like to be on a dating app, as curious people who'd never been on them. And also like we just really dove in like head first really, really early in our relationship. We got matching tattoos like 2 weeks into dating. Not advisable necessarily. We got a dog like 3 months into dating. Rachel moved in basically right away to my apartment because she was working at she was like technically living in Harlem, and she was working at a juice bar that was like 2 blocks from my apartment that she had to be at like 6:00 in the morning. So she moved in like right away. And then early on in my relationship with Rachel like allowed me to sort of like buckle down. And even though I was still using, like some things got sorted in my life and things got financially better. And my dad was really struggling in Arizona. My dad is a permanently disabled 9/11 first responder who has like a bunch of PTSD and other health issues. And my dad was essentially, you know, houseless living in Arizona. And I was like having nightmares about it and like not knowing what to do. And then Rachel and I like talked one day, and we had an extra bedroom in our apartment on the Lower East Side. And within like the first 6 months of us dating, my dad moved in with us for a year.
Wow.
So there was this like really strong commitment really, really early on. What's funny is like we didn't make any plans at all. Like we didn't get engaged until like 6 years into our relationship, which is after me getting sober or whatever. But we used to always say this thing like forever for now. You know, there was just like, it was kind of, it's almost like one day at a time, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That. It's like forever, but like for now, like what do we do for now to make forever happen? Yeah. And what's crazy is that like I don't really remember what it was like when it was really bad towards the end. Like not really sleeping, drinking enough, but also doing like a lot of heroin and a lot of cocaine. Put me in a place that like I just sort of remember Rachel being like, I'm leaving, and me sort of like snapping into it and being like, I have to do something about this. And then like really leaning into it, and like definitely bumps along the way. Relapse is a huge part of my story, but yeah, I don't know. And then like there's a lot of, Rachel's really independent. She's not a jealous person. She demands rigorous honesty, but has never been like trying to catch me in anything. Like I never felt like there was an adversarial relationship between my substance use and my relationship. But I did know that unless I got it under control, it was going to end. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, she's the most extraordinary partner, but she is the most extraordinary partner. Our relationship, I don't know. She just like, for some reason, trusts me, I guess, to a certain extent, or for her own self-care or something. Like, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But it was like, figure this out, like do this stuff. And occasionally she'd be like, have you done this recently? And she'd be like, maybe you should do that.
Yeah.
And she was there through some struggles and stuff, and would get mad if I like, you know, was being dishonest or something like that. But I never felt like it wasn't safe for me to struggle.
That's
you
amazing.
Know?
Yeah.
Like I never felt like it was, and it's still that way, right? Like my mental health issues that I've had in sobriety, career stuff. What do I do? I've never felt like, as long as I show up honestly, like I've never felt like me having what feels like the most problems out of anybody in the entire world, which I know like just on paper, like isn't the case. I've never felt that me feeling like that is some sort of an inconvenience. And I think that is just like such a blessing.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I wanted you to highlight that because it's really incredible. You don't hear a lot of stories like that where she was really there from day one and then watched you get sober and relapse and go through all of that. Yeah. So it's a really unique story that I think is incredible.
Yeah, well, I feel like it's incredible. It is my story, but I mean, I feel so incredibly like privileged, and gratitude is the thing that I lean with, I think, in my relationship as much as I can. Yeah, I mean, it's not without, there's like falling in love that young and building a relationship like that, especially when you're kids, is not without its, you know, it's been amazing, and there's overwhelming positives, but it's definitely not without its challenges.
Definitely.
It's really easy to feel really, really comfortable really early. And I think that's partially why I stayed in a career that I didn't like as long as I wanted to, is because I was so satisfied in these other spaces.
Yeah.
And I think generally in life, that's something that I can like fall into, is being like, I've got it so good. Like, who am I to ask for more?
Yeah.
Is something I can sometimes feel. And if anything, like, you know, I don't know, people who have less would be like, that's such a mistake. Like, if you have the ability to like constantly improve, like, please do.
Yeah.
Don't waste that opportunity.
Definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely, yeah, it's I mean, my relationship's extraordinary, but it is not perfect.
Yeah. I think a lot of times people do the get sober for someone else and then have it be for themselves, whether it be their partner, their mom, their dad, their friend, whoever it may be. So that's great, because sometimes it pushes you to then make it about yourself, because you can get sober for someone else, but you're going to stay sober for yourself.
Yeah.
But I think it's really neat too that you worked in the restaurant industry and hospitality and all of that, because
yeah, I mean, that was just like, yeah, that was, sorry to cut you off. No, that was just like, I mean, that was just like, wait, hold on, I can like, initially at first it was like, oh wait, I can like party really hard for free. Not only for free, but you're gonna pay me to do that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, then when my dad was sick, it was like, oh wait, I can have all this free time to spend time with my dad.
Yeah.
And like care for him and like move him in here and get things settled. And also, it gave us the financial freedom early on, and the time freedom for like Rachel to go to grad school and explore other career stuff. And it gave us a lot of flexibility.
Yeah.
The work that I did. So it's not without its benefits. And I learned a lot as well. But yeah, I definitely got into it. Like, I graduated from college in the financial crisis and was unemployable. Not only because I'd studied English in college, which I adored, but was not prepared for whatever jobs were available in the marketplace in 2008. And then also, you know, I was, you know, an addict. So it was like, who will have me?
Yeah.
And it turns out that this bar on the corner of Center Street and Broome Street was very happy to have me.
Yeah.
And then a number of bars after that were happy to have me. And then some business partners were happy to have me. And, you know, I never really felt good about myself or like capable of doing something different. So I just went where it was warm enough for a long time professionally. But I mean, it's amazing sitting here talking to you, though. It's the gift of sobriety is that I truly, I truly live like without regret. And maybe that's, some people externally might think that's sort of like selfish, because I definitely caused a lot of harm, and I've tried to apologize to people who I've caused harm to in my addiction. But I mean, everything brought me to this moment right here.
Exactly.
And then also, I learned this thing where I make this assumption that most people, you know, that the thing we all need as a culture and as a species is human connection and real relationships with many tentacles into our community. We need that to thrive.
Yeah.
And I feel like myself as an addict, I've been given like this ultimate gift that not only do I need it to thrive, but like I need it to just not die. So like the most important thing I could have in my life is not some sort of luxury, but it's mandatory. So this, in order for me to stay, you know, stay above ground, I have to be building relationships with other people.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I love that we were able to connect, and so many amazing people exist out there in sobriety to connect with. And I know, at least for myself, I would not be able to connect with people the way I do today if not for sobriety. So it really is amazing.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Maddie, thank you so much for having me.
Thank
This
you
is
so
amazing.
much. Do you have any parting words for anyone out there who
I mean,
is trying to get
I'll
sober?
plug a couple. Oh, parting words for people trying to get sober.
Both. You can plug some people too.
Parting words for people trying to get sober. Oh, geez. That's tough. Gosh, there's so many tools out here. And the other thing is that, I don't know, this is another segue, but I've become like a huge advocate and supporter of the harm reduction community.
Mm-hmm.
In that, if you're trying to get sober, just find spaces where you can find dignity and find opportunities to love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the real key to not only getting sober, but staying sober and being fulfilled.
Yeah.
Which I get in glimpses, is just finding opportunities to experience dignity and value. Because like, you are valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is valuable. So that's the advice that I would give. And that, we're here, like the meetings everywhere. Phoenix is here for you. Put my email or something in the description. If anyone has any questions, they can reach out. But yeah, that's what I would say to them. And then the last thing I want to say is support Maddie and the Phoenix. If you have the capacity to donate or share her fundraising link, share it. We're going to have a blast running the marathon and raising money for this amazing organization that's changed my lives, and I get to see it change people's lives every day. And then, come out and join us.
Yeah.
Love to have everyone.
Love
All
it.
right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Maddie.
Getting real. I'll put the link to your email and then also our donation page for the marathon as well.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in and getting real with us. Podcast will be posted every other Wednesday on Spotify and YouTube. Please reach out via DM if you want to chat.